What is overcapacity? Why China's excess production is scaring the world? A factory owner in a small town was sitting until late at night. Outside, trucks were standing, the warehouse was full, machines were running, but orders were falling short. He was thinking, if the market is already filled with cheap goods, how will my factory run? Who will pay the laborer's salary, bank loan, and electricity bill? The fear starts from right here, because when the world's largest factories make more goods than needed, the impact is not just on the price. The jobs, industries, and even the security of many countries can shake. And the curiosity is how something that seems cheap to the consumer becomes a threat to a factory in another country. This very story is about overcapacity. Overcapacity means an industry's or a country's production capacity becomes much higher than its real demand. Meaning, a factory can make 100 units, but the market wants to buy only 60 units. In such a situation, the remaining 40 units cannot be kept useless. Companies give discounts to sell them, increase exports, and push them into the markets of other countries. Look at an easy example. If a country's factories can make 100 lakh electric vehicles in a year, but the domestic demand inside is for only 60 lakh vehicles, then the remaining capacity becomes a pressure. Now the company has two ways forward. Either reduce production and keep the factory idle, or capture market share by sending cheap goods to other countries. From right here, global tension begins. One country says that our consumers are getting cheaper products. The other country says that our local industry is dying. This very debate regarding China has intensified. America, the European Union, and G7 countries are saying that China's industrial capacity in many sectors has grown faster than world demand. China's economy has been built on manufacturing power for a long time. There, large factories, state support, cheap financing, strong supply chains, and export focus have made production massive. Earlier, the world considered this an advantage. China made cheap goods, the world bought them, inflation remained under control, and consumers got affordable products. But now the matter is not limited to just toys, clothes, or electronics. Now China is dominant in strategic sectors like EVs, batteries, solar panels, steel, critical minerals, and permanent magnets. Strategic sectors are important because they are connected to the future economy and national security. You need a battery in an EV, a magnet in a wind turbine, and rare earth magnets in a missile and drone. If the supply of these materials comes under the control of just one country too much, then the rest of the world becomes vulnerable. This very fear is making the G7 countries anxious today. In Canada, the 2025 G7 Critical Minerals Action Plan raised the point of diversifying supply chains. After that, in the 2026 G7 declaration, this concern was turned into a more concrete target. The G7's target is that dependence on any single non-G7 supplier for rare earths and permanent magnets should be brought below 60% by 2030 and further reduced to 50%. This is an attempt to address China's dominance without directly taking China's name. Because China's hold on rare earth processing and permanent magnets is very strong. According to the IEA, China controlled 94% of sintered permanent magnets production in 2024. These magnets are essential for EV motors, wind turbines, and defense systems. In EVs and batteries too, China's hold is massive. According to the IEA, in 2025, China held nearly 70% of global electric car production and more than 80% of battery cell production. Now think, if tomorrow there is trade tension, export control, or geopolitical conflict, factories in other countries could suddenly stop. This is the strategic risk of overdependence. The second part of the concern about overcapacity is connected to price. When too much supply comes into the market, prices fall down. Consumers are happy, but producers start to struggle. Solar panels are a good example of this. Cheap Chinese solar panels made clean energy affordable, but the local solar manufacturing of many countries weakened. This same tension is visible in the EV sector too. When Chinese companies enter the global market with aggressive pricing, the car companies of Europe and America come under pressure. The European Union imposed countervailing duties on China-made battery electric vehicles because the EU investigation showed the Chinese EV value chain benefiting from unfair subsidies. America also increased tariffs on Chinese EVs, batteries, solar cells, steel, and aluminum. This is not just trade policy but a battle for industrial survival. China often rejects these allegations. Beijing says that its companies are competitive, innovation is strong, and Western countries want to stop China in the name of protectionism. Meaning, the debate is between two narratives. The West says China is distorting the market with subsidies and overcapacity. China says our efficiency and scale are providing cheap green technology to the world. The truth is probably somewhere in the middle. China has built an extraordinary scale in manufacturing, but when state-backed capacity goes ahead of global demand, other countries feel insecure. Overcapacity is not always bad. If the extra capacity is temporary, it can be used when demand increases. But if excess capacity continuously becomes export pressure, then the problem becomes serious. Its impact falls on local industries. Suppose a battery factory is set up in India, a loan has been taken, workers have been hired, and suddenly very cheap imported batteries come into the market. The Indian company cannot match the price. If it reduces the price, there is a loss. If it does not reduce the price, customers buy the imported battery. Slowly the local factory starts closing down. Then jobs are lost, the technology ecosystem weakens, and the country again becomes dependent on imports. This fear is not just India's, but also of Europe, America, Japan, and many developing countries. Everyone wants the green transition to happen, but not by destroying their own industry. Trade tensions also increase because of overcapacity. When one country accuses another of dumping, tariffs are imposed. Then the opposing country takes retaliatory steps. In this way, a story that started with a cheap product can turn into a trade war. After consumers get the benefit, eventually prices, supply, and market stability can be affected. The tension in critical minerals is even more sensitive. Lithium, nickel, cobalt, graphite, and rare earths are not just commercial items. They are the backbone of batteries, chips, defense, and clean energy. The G7 has therefore emphasized stockpiling, recycling, and new mining projects. The purpose is that if one source stops, the entire supply chain does not freeze. China has defended its rare earth export controls and said that these controls are in accordance with international norms and non-proliferation goals. But G7 countries feel that when one country holds too much control over processing and magnets, export controls can also become a geopolitical weapon. It is necessary to understand permanent magnets. These small components are useful in EV motors, smartphones, drones, fighter jets, wind turbines, and medical equipment. If the magnet supply stops, making the final product can become difficult. A tiny component can slow down an entire billion-dollar industry. This is the reason why the G7 has increased focus not just on mining but on processing, refining, recycling, and traceability. Extracting raw material alone is not enough. Converting it into a usable component is also necessary. China's strength is that it has built the entire chain. From mineral to chemical processing, battery material, cell manufacturing, and the final EV, the ecosystem is tightly connected. The problem for other countries is that they might have mines, but the processing happens in China. Or they might have technology, but the cost competitiveness is not like China's. For India, this situation is both an opportunity and a risk. The risk is that cheap imports can put domestic manufacturers under pressure. The opportunity is that if the world adopts a China Plus One strategy, India can make its place in EV components, batteries, solar modules, and critical minerals processing. To increase manufacturing, India has focused on PLI schemes, a battery storage push, solar manufacturing, and the EV ecosystem. But the competition will not be easy. If extremely cheap products keep coming from China, Indian companies will have to improve fast on all three: scale, quality, and cost. Long-term success will not be achieved through protection alone. But without smart protection, infant industries can also find it difficult to survive. Therefore, policy balance is very important. On one hand, India's renewable energy goals can speed up with cheap solar panels. On the other hand, if domestic solar manufacturing becomes weak, dependence will increase in the future. It is the same in EVs too. Consumers want affordable EVs, but if battery cells and motors completely depend on imports, strategic vulnerability will remain. There is a human angle to overcapacity as well. When cheap imports cause a local factory to close down, it is not just the balance sheet that falls. Workers' jobs, families' income, and the local economy are affected. But it has another human angle too. Poor consumers get affordable technology from cheap products. If a solar panel, EV scooter, or battery is cheap, adoption increases. Therefore, the overcapacity debate is not black and white. It carries both the joy of cheap things and the worry of domestic industry together. Factors like weak demand and a property sector slowdown in China's domestic economy have also increased export pressure. When demand is low at home, companies look for markets outside. If factories are closed down, it can cause unemployment and debt problems. Therefore, continuing production becomes a political and economic necessity for China too. But the world says that China should not dump its internal imbalances onto global markets. This is the core of international friction. This concern is old in the steel sector. China's massive steel capacity has put pressure on global prices and producers for years. Now the same pattern is visible in clean energy sectors. The difference is that solar, batteries and EVs are future industries, so the fight has become even more strategic. If a country falls behind in future industries, it can lose not just today's jobs, but tomorrow's technology leadership as well. This is why America and Europe are working together on tariffs, subsidies, local manufacturing, and supply chain diversification. The G7's Critical Minerals Alliance is part of this bigger strategy. Its purpose is not to replace China immediately, but to reduce dependence and create an alternative network. But this will not be easy. Opening mines takes years, environmental approvals are difficult, processing plants are expensive, and a skilled workforce is required. Recycling is also important, but currently the recycling scale for rare earths and battery materials is not sufficient. Even so, it can reduce dependence in the long term. In this situation, India will have to move with strategy, not with haste. Being happy just by looking at imported cheap products is risky, and resting just by putting up protection is also risky. We will have to give technology, finance, skilled manpower, testing standards and stable policy support to domestic companies so that they can compete on global quality. Consumers also have to understand that every cheap thing is not a good deal in the long term. Sometimes a cheap price carries a hidden cost of future dependence. The message for business owners is clear. Do not be afraid of China's scale, learn from it. Serious work will have to be done on cost efficiency, supply chain discipline, and quality control. The challenge for the government is to make India a trusted alternative in global supply chains. For this, mining, refining, manufacturing, and export capability will have to be built together. The entire story of overcapacity tells us that manufacturing is not just about a factory. It is a story of jobs, trade, diplomacy, security, and technology power. When China makes more than needed, the world gets cheap goods. But along with that, pressure on local industries, supply dependence, and trade conflicts also increase. Therefore, the question is not whether China's production is good or bad. The real question is whether the world can remain so dependent on a single manufacturing giant. And the biggest question for India is whether we will become just a market that buys cheap goods, or a manufacturing power that makes future industries as well. Because in the coming world, power will not come from oil wells alone. Power will come from batteries, chips, magnets, minerals, and factories. The fear of overcapacity is a warning signal of this very future. The countries that build their supply chains in time will stand strongly in tomorrow's economy. And the countries that just form a habit of imported cheap goods might save today, but they could lose their industrial independence tomorrow.
If this video has taught you something new, or if you feel this information should reach more people, don't forget to like and share the video. Your small share can become valuable and useful information for someone else. If you have any questions related to this topic, or if you would like to share your opinion with us, be sure to write in the comment box. We read every question and suggestion from you, because your feedback inspires us to create better content. And if you want to keep receiving such interesting and reliable information about business, the economy, and the world in the future, then don't forget to subscribe to our channel GRT Business and also press the bell icon so that you get notifications of every new video directly. At GRT Business, we always strive to provide you with accurate, balanced, and reliable information. Our news and analysis are prepared based on information obtained from various news agencies, public sources, and public opinion. We make every effort to verify and validate each fact as much as possible. But in case of any possible error or dispute, the responsibility lies with the respective sources. Our only aim is to present you with a correct and trustworthy perspective so that you can understand any topic better.